spawning in as the Holy Roman Empire, playing as the color blue, is GiveUAnxiety. And who do we have in the south?
In the southwest corner of the map, southeast corner of the map, I'm not dumb, is Faye playing in the orange and playing as the Roos. And a small shout out, I just got to give our both of our players here props. I love seeing blue and orange as our two colors. I think we see way too much red and blue. Blue and orange, solid choice.
Now, I think on the color wheel they are complementary. So it's probably why, yeah, I think that's why it's very pleasing to your eye and pleasing to mine as well. I'm going to give this a pause just for a couple seconds because I am getting a little bit of stutter here. But HRE and Roos in matchup as a whole, as I pause this for just a second. Matchup as a whole, what kind of play do you see out of both of these civs when they go up against each other?
Well, something interesting is that we don't think about this all that often, because when we think about knights, we think about the French, but the Roos get knights in age 2. So you have this man-at-arms versus early knights matchup, and while it's something that the Roos can do, it's a little bit counterintuitive because the Holy Roman Empire also gets bonus damage versus armored units thanks to their unique upgrades to the man-at-arms. So this really ends up being kind of a race to Castle Age in a lot of ways for both of these civilizations. That's not to say we won't see any feudal aggression from either of them, but it really feels like both of them hit their power spike in Castle, and Roos wants to get there so they can get crossbows, right? Because you have to know that their Holy Roman Empire is going to be bringing something armored like men-at-arms at you. So the faster you get to crossbows, the better you feel. And the Holy Roman Empire on the other side wants to get to Castle Age because it represents a huge power spike for them, and it also lets them get out and pick up these relics and sacred sites, and that's big for them because if they choose to go Regnitz, it represents a huge portion of gold that they're going to want.
Yeah, and a lot of the times I do see the Holy Roman Empire go for Regnitz and Castle Age, just because that Burgrave, when they choose to use it or go up into Castle, that Burgrave pumping out those men-at-arms, not really that effective when a Roos player already has Knights and Feudal. So they are able to kind of combat that early Burgrave rush that snowballs them into a victory. GUA with that Feudal age, hitting the button, going for the Aachen Chapel. Give me a comment or two on this Aachen Chapel placement. What do you think about it?
I don't love it, to be perfectly honest. No offense intended whatsoever to GUA, but I feel like you would miss the wood, but would it not be just like so much better to put this Aachen on the other side of the town center, like to the southwest? You would get the stone, you could get the gold, the sheep, and the berries. Like I said, you miss the wood, but with it as it currently sits, I feel like that's kind of all you get is the wood. And
yeah, I mean,
under the town center, I guess.
I would argue this placement that I'm showing the lovely viewers on their screen on the south side, if you wanted to get wood, there's a south wood line here, a gold mine, and then you would be able to get the sheep as well. So I do get that. The Aachen Chapel that I know. Oh, I know. I'm getting there. Faye going with the Kremlin and a rather forward Kremlin, not necessarily forward in GUA's face, but if GUA does see that Kremlin, he's going to know that Faye is not going for the Golden Gate, not going to be getting those little bit of extra resources that act as a market. And surprisingly enough, for Faye, this Kremlin and the range that it has is impressive to the point where it is touching that lumber camp, believe me.
The influence range on the Kremlin is absolutely absurd. They buffed it a while back, and it looked like something that was supposed to be in like an early testing build, and they just kind of left it. But it's so good for the Roos, and the Kremlin is such an underused landmark that I just don't care. I feel like it's still really good, and honestly, it makes a lot of sense because the Kremlin is obviously a landmark. It's something you place once, but your wood line is going to move several times throughout the game. So having it be such a tiny little sphere of influence that's only going to impact your lumber camp for the first 10 minutes of the game is not really something that feels great to pick, especially when the Golden Gate is so strong on the other side. Speaking of, we see Faye Chan here luring the boar right underneath the Kremlin, going to be able to pick that up. Lots of bounty, perfect for what you're looking for as the Roos, as well as a great source of food. Maybe going to be able to get this scout? No, he'll be able to retreat outside the range of those arrows, get himself out to safety. But yeah, that's definitely interesting. And something on the other side that we missed while we were fawning over the Kremlin is GUA has actually gone up to 350 stone immediately. So he is definitely looking to drop down a second TC the second he hits 400 wood. He took all of his vills, almost, moved them to stone, got to 350 stone, and then transferred almost all of them to wood. And now you can see he's got a set of 8 heading out to this hunt on the top right side. Going to drop a second TC very early there. 5 minutes 35. He gets that second TC under construction. That's going to represent a big way that he's going to start scaling out, you know, past what Faye can do.
And this is a Season 3 build that has been growing in popularity into Season 4. HRE staying in feudal, going for the second town center. However, we do have our little Kremlin gremlins coming from the south side. These militia, obviously, with their lifespan, is rather small, but they will find this second town center coming up, and the militia are going to have something to say about it, trying to get these villagers out of the way, making sure they can't build it. GUA with good micro, going to get one of those villagers around. And these militia are essentially just a bothersome for GUA. It's going to make a little bit of idle time here, and a lot of these with these militia, you might be thinking, well, why aren't they retreating? Why aren't they going out and they might be preserved for a future fight? They only had 10 seconds anyway. So if they die, you know, not that big of a deal. So another added bonus for the Kremlin against an HRE player that really doesn't like to be bothered.
And that's why you'll notice a lot of players who go with the Kremlin will put it forward if you're, you know, not familiar with playing against the Rus in Season 4. It's because they want to get as much uptime on those gremlins as they can. And, you know, the closer it is to your enemy base, the less time of their 90-second lives they can spend walking, trying to get to where they're going. Looks like an outpost being thrown up on the gold by GUA. Faye's going to try and do something about that. Now, using that hunting cabin she placed at the very beginning of the game, going to get several of these scouts out. Going to try and siege down the outpost, but gets distracted by the enemy scout who appears in the area. And thanks to just how strong emergency repairs is, that outpost will be just fine. Going to end up taking that gold with an outpost. So I really like that preemptive outpost placed by GUA. Just says, hey, forget about your little militia. I'm not going to deal with those right now. I'll just take as much gold as I feel like, and I'll go up to Castle Age. And with this number of bills, this is make no mistake. 14 bills on or 11 bills on gold. Yeah, he's headed to Castle.
And that's such a frustrating thing too, because Faye did the right thing. She sent her 3 scouts out. She went to try to get rid of that tower, get some health off. HRE having emergency repairs, saying nope, never happened. Now with this army composition that I'm seeing here, GUA adding a stable, going to add a couple horsemen just to give himself a little bit of map presence, which I can appreciate. This is especially good if you're going up to Castle Age with Regnants. Just having a few units around, making sure that these relics are getting protected, and it looks like GUA on the east side does have a horseman that he's just going to put standing ground over here near these relics, because a lot of the times a very good defense for the Rus in particular is walling around those relics so GUA doesn't get them. The Rus having fortified palisades, it takes even more time for them to get them, but it looks like GUA is going to beat Faye to the punch there.
Yeah, like we predicted at the beginning of the game, this is absolutely a race to Castle Age. Second town center we did not highlight, but was actually also thrown up for Faye Chan in the corner, back down by these berries and the trade posts. So there is always the option for trade there, protected by the TC, but also, you know, scaling equally on villagers. You know, she's a couple bills behind, just probably on idle time, or maybe threw up her second town center a little bit later. Either way, nothing that's really going to impact the game in a major way at this point in time. At this point, what we're really looking for is who can get up to castle fastest, and who can get their monks out to pick up those monk/prelate to pick up those relics. And the Regnus and Abbey of the Trinity, both landmarks that are centered around increasing the gold you get from relics, so we can see their hands both being played right now. And it's just a race to see who gets up and who gets out there first to get those relics. The Regnus is being built with more villagers, so it'll go up faster, but warrior monks move a heck of a lot faster than prelates do, so it's anybody's game right now.
Oh yeah, this is pretty much neck and neck, because you got to think about the Abbey. You still got to train those warrior monks, even though they're a little bit cheaper. So it might benefit GUA and the horsemen that he had, just getting those prelates around those relics, so as soon as the Regnants is actually completed, you can go ahead and pick them up. And Faye is going all in, just kind of anti-relic, and the best way to go anti-relic is making sure you have them. instead of your opponent and placing them in the Abbey. Another great thing about the Abbey that was just buffed recently is some of the technologies that come from it in terms of getting Saint's Blessing just a little bit, and we'll go over that when the Abbey is completed. But Regnitz is first for HRE, and you hear the relic sound, ring-a-ding-ding, over on the east side. Prelate's got the first one.
Yeah, and that was actually betrayed to Faye-chan as well, because the second that GUA hit Castle Age, the Prelate walked across the Sacred Site, which is notified to the enemy player. So she knows this relic is done and gone. She has nobody in the area to take care of it or get anything out there to do anything about it. So that relic is gone. She knows that now. She is paying attention. She has her militia as well in the area of the relic in the kind of southish side. So 2 relics are actually now picked up and in the hands of GUA. So losing out on that race, there's the 3rd being picked up. She's just a little bit too slow getting where she wants to go, and if she can maybe get this Prelate down. Oh, that's right. Scouts only do 1 damage to Prelates as well as villagers. Yeah, this Prelate will be just fine. He's definitely gonna make it away.
Now, she does have these militia trying to come up here and trying to get this Prelate, but little Wololo going off.
Does that go off?
No. Almost. But that relic is going to be safe for Faye right now. First Warrior Monk does hit the battlefield, and look at what Faye is making in terms of army composition. She's making Horse Archers. Let's go.
Love Horse Archers. Such a fun unit to see come out. I love the way that they can influence the Roost playstyle and that they're available so early, because it just makes it so that you hit Castle Age really early in Age of Empires 4 as compared to other Age of Empires games, and it means that you get those Horse Archers out, you can start building the critical mass that they love to hit. Makes them so powerful.
And, I mean, are these Horse Archers as good as they used to be? No, they're not. I mean, they used to be, you can animation cancel and do all of these fast castle builds with the Roost, but just because of the damage that they're able to possess, just having 12 base damage, means they do okay against Knights, and they're able to kite them, they're able to have the mobility to make sure that they're okay, and the Warrior Monk can pick it up, and also, she gets an A move before the Wololo, so these Horse Archers do have Saint's Blessing, having +2 damage and +1 armor. Sticks around for a decent amount of time. That armor is huge to be able to take down those Knights, and that is +1 relic for Faye.
And because she went with the Abbey of the Trinity, she will be able to pick up, Divine Light and Fervor, which are these new techs that increase the effectiveness of Saint's Blessing quite a bit, which will make it so that if she continues to build into it, can stick around for longer and be more effective during these extended fights with those Knights. And like you highlighted, they have, I think, the exact same movement speed Knights and Horse Archers do. So that means that, they can kite endlessly as long as the micro is on point there.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that +2, really, if you have a Warrior Monk with them, which you will when you're picking up relics anyway, it's going to be really beneficial. But GUA, pretty high in the economic count, 62 to 48 in favor of GUA, and does have more relics as well, and will have that relic advantage for the rest of the game. The issue is GUA went ahead and threw one of his Knights, maybe 1 or 2 of his Knights, over to this area where there's a lot of economic units for Faye. Doesn't have much in the way of static defenses over there. A lot of villagers went down, so economic count majorly in favor of GUA. He knows that, so he's walling on the south side.
Going to try and make sure there are no counter raids whatsoever coming in towards his way, or at least if there are, he's got a good delay for those palisades to be burned down. He's got some defense to keep him safe. Trying to neutralize these sacred sites now is Faye-chan, which is exactly what you want to do. You don't want to let all this passive gold go the way of GUA for free, especially as he's already got 3 relics in the bank. It ended up being a 3-2 split in favor of the Holy Roman Empire on those relics, which feels good, but not great. You're not ecstatic about that if you're GUA, and if you're Faye-chan, you don't feel horrible that you missed out on the 3rd relic. You just feel, okay. This is okay. Manageable.
Yeah, it could, and you're exactly right. It could have been a lot worse, right? But Faye does have the presence of mind with all of the Horse Archers that she has. Getting Boyar's Fortitude, which we do have to highlight, a little bit of a buff. Instead of +20, it's +30, and a whole heck of a lot cheaper. So those Horse Archers are going to be a little bit buffed, and she's getting Blacksmith upgrades to help her out. And actually, instead of Knight, she's going to go with Veteran Horsemen, over here. Now, these horse archers, they have a good amount of damage to do well against men-at-arms, but maybe some horsemen being the front line is really going to help her out. And trying to get the sacred sites a little bit of map control. Now, GiveUA in the north side, he's struggling to get his food kind of stabilized. He does have a decent amount of farms over here around his Akka Chapel, but he needs to go out to this outside food resource, these deer that have been killed in Dark Age, and adding some outposts there. That could be an area of attack for the Faye if she chooses to, but now just trying to get these sacred sites a little bit of gold boost for her.
And she'll get a little bit, maybe half a minute's worth or something, but this will quickly be decapped. Actually not reacting in time to save the warrior monk. He could have gotten away there, but going to be losing that. Not the cheapest thing in the world to be thrown away like that. So Sacred Site in the top going to be neutralized, but as that happens, Sacred Site in the bottom also going to be capped right up. So, you know, just kind of playing ring around the rosy, trying to make sure you get as many of these as you can, losing another one of, I think that was actually a horse archer, not a warrior monk, but either way. Trying to make sure you stay on top of those, trying to make sure you have as many of them as you can to get that passive gold. Going to try and help you keep up with how much gold you bring in as the Holy Roman Empire once you get your hands on a few of those relics.
Yeah, and a lot of time for the HRE, because they have 2 town centers and they have a decent economic count, might not necessarily be channeling to get to Swabia as fast as they possibly can. So they're okay with and content with hanging out in Castle Age. Now that these horse archers, we got about 17 of them in this little skirmish. That is enough DPS to take down these knights, and these horsemen are essentially fodder just to make sure that those horse archers don't get trampled down. She does have crossbowmen in and around her base. She's got about 14 of them, which is going to help her against the men-at-arms as well. So if she does take this fight, it could be pretty good for her if she tries to take the sacred site back. The only thing she does not have is siege superiority, GiveUA having 1 mangonel to 0 on the side of Faye.
Which does make it a little bit, you know, nerve-wracking to move these crossbowmen out into the field. I can understand the reticence, wanting to make sure that you're protected, especially as the top side of your base is not walled here. You have a wooden fortress up here at the top right, giving you quite decent amount of vision. If there's a run by for some knights or men-at-arms, you're going to want something to protect that. But I really do think she's going to want all of her army grouped here, because while her army is bigger than GiveUA's, if she, you know, keeps them split up and separate like this, it won't be very fun. First mangonel shot comes out there doing lots of damage to all of those horse archers. They are ranged units, which means they take a lot of damage from mangonels, cavalry or not. So I think you're going to want this army to be grouped and, you know, bring in some of these horsemen. They'll be great to dive in and take out these mangonels as long as they're not hidden on the other side of this gate. That's the frustrating part here, is you want to engage, you want to neutralize this sacred site, but with the walls thrown up, those mangonels are so safe, unless you get some springles out here.
Yeah, and you hit the nail right on the head in terms of that sacred site. The mangonels can just shoot right over these palisade walls and no problem. And it looks like Faye's looking for a different way of attack just because of that. She knows that those mangonels are rather slow and are going to have to move all the way across the map if she tries to pick a different point of attack. And I thought she was going south, but decides to go north instead. And I want to pan away just a little bit because GiveUA is going to Imperial Age and is going up with the Palace of Swabia. 23 villagers on it with an economic count of 86. To be honest, I'm kind of surprised that Swabia is getting placed. A lot of the reasons why this will go up in a 2-town center HRE build is just because it's cheaper.
That's what I was about to say, is that this has way less to do with the villager printer and more to do with the fact that it's discounted. I honestly think that the Palace of Swabia would still be chosen most of the time, even if the villager production speed boost were completely removed from the landmark. I think its biggest advantage over the Carlsbad Palace is that it's so cheap to go up to him with it, and it just makes it so easy to throw that down when you have a little bit of floating res, and all of a sudden you've got an age up on your opponent, and because of that, upgrades on the way. You can see elite spearmen coming through, and that means that Faye-chan cannot stick around and try and contest the sacred site. This is a done deal until she can get up to Imp herself.
Yeah, and she does have the military lead just because of how much she has, and deciding to add spearmen into her composition as well. So even though she has a decent amount of army, a lot of it just kind of hanging out behind the base. She does have 3 springles to try to contest these mangonels, again, because the palisade's got to shoot through the gate instead. And it looks like she's going to keep goading into this sacred site. If these mangonels get good shots, though, those horse archers are as good as dead. Let's see if they can actually get a good shot off behind these walls.
Here comes the shots. They're going to be pretty big. A couple go down. Mostly they hit the edge of that mass, though, which means that not too many of them took huge amounts of damage. These Springles took quite a while to get built and move up to the front now. There are no Springles at all, though, for GiveUA. So if he's not extremely careful with these mangonel positioning, they will all be down in an instant. And then, you know, it's very easy for these horse archers to run roughshod over what's left here for GiveUA's mass. Still a little bit hesitant to engage, though, despite the fact, you know, that there's not... We've got the God vision, you know, we can see that there are no Springles hiding behind these gates. She doesn't know that, so it makes it a lot more tricky to want to engage and dive into these Springles when, or excuse me, these mangonels when you don't know what siege may or may not be lurking behind these palisade walls. Also, throwing up a keep, I like this keep a lot. It solidifies map control over on this western side, and you grab late stone and late gold for the game as you know, for the late game as you need them.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. This keep is a fantastic spot. You're getting multiple resources just kind of hunkered down here. But as Faye tried to get some of this sacred site, one of the very interesting things is there's an outpost over here shooting cannonballs at some of these horsemen, and one horseman does go down in the process of me making that sentence. But this outpost does have a relic on it, increasing its weapon range by 20%. So having that bombard upgrade, and it looks like that's what GiveUA is trying to do with all of the villagers he has on stone of about 16. Just making sure that all of his outposts have relics in them, have bombard towers. So if she does try to cap this sacred site, which is basically the contest of this entire match essentially, there's going to be bombard towers that are going to help him, which I've heard a lot of pros say. It adds maybe about 10 to 15 population to your fights.
Yeah, it's a huge difference because they do all of their damage at their entire range. There is no splash damage fall off range. And that makes them so effective, particularly against units that like to clump and stand in large groups, and that's ranged units. And that's a lot of what the Ruse player is running here. Oh, hang on, we've got a breakthrough on the walls on the left side, looking for some kind of run-by with all of these horsemen. Unfortunately, I don't think GiveUA knows that there's a second layer of onion defense walls here. They're going to keep him out of the base, but at the very least, they will be able to try and neutralize the sacred site. But now that the armies have split up, we've got engagements on both sides of the map. This keep does finish, and will begin raining down arrows onto this army from the Holy Roman Empire. No boiling oil just yet, but as that happens, we've got the cavalry facing off against each other in the south side. The micro going to be impressive here as both of these armies trying to work each other down at the same time. Got to keep the Springles alive so that they can take out those mangonels, keep them from joining the fight. One shot goes off, not able to lock on and get a second, but yeah, those mangonels completely taken out of the fight thanks to the presence of these Springles, but they have to stay alive, and that will change real fast.
And those Springles, as soon as you say that, one pops into Kindling, but Faye using her villagers to try to repair some of these Springles. Second one goes into Kindling as well. All three mangonels from GiveUA on the western side staying alive. Faye actually the winner of this battle just because of how good the keep was for her. But in the beginning, she had a lot of spearmen out up front just to be that kind of front line for the crossbowmen to do damage. Those land snakes from GiveUA just disintegrated them. Fortunately enough, not being able to get to the crossbow mass, so military count 68 to 18, while on the south side, the horsemen for GiveUA did get cleaned up as well. You got to think with when you won 2 engagements simultaneously, you got to start getting up there.
Yeah, this is huge. Faye is in the driver's seat right now, and you have to know that you just cleaned up both of those armies. You have to have the military advantage at this point. It's time to go. She's got 2 counterweight trebuchets, both moving in. I think behind this, you're nearing the pop cap. You should stock up some food. She's got all the gold she needs in the world. Stock up some food, maybe throw down a market and buy your way to Castle A, or to Inn. But get yourself up there and start pushing, because there's a window now for you to do some damage, but you have to take advantage of it before GiveUA is in for remass.
And it's such a difficult time for Faye, because I know you're talking about going up to Imperial. She's got on the south side, she's trying to get some farm economy going, which is so difficult for Ruse to do. But on this western side, looks like GiveUA just got to keep up. Horsemen and horse archers found that a lot of villagers went down in the process. That's what's so nice about having Swabia. If your villagers do get raided, you can just quickly bank them up with an economic count 132
Oh my
to
goodness.
100.
Look at this villager. She's about to overchop and create a hole in the wall. It may not matter because the gate may go down first, but they might already be able to run through there. I'm not entirely sure. Either way, there's definitely going to be some outposts sort of trying to keep this raid from coming through. They're going to be far too late. One goes up, no arrow slits, no defenses whatsoever. Tons of villagers going to be going down here. And while that happens, the army for Faye Chan is pushing through on the right side as well. So once again, simultaneous pushes on both sides of the map here. This time, the Rus army going to be forced back, not going to result in too much more dead villagers, but the high armory is on its way up, and the Rus siege in the late game is so stinking powerful. And as this game drags on more and more, we'll find siege more and more important. I think that high armory is going to be really important as the game goes on.
And these technologies from the high armory were improved just a little bit, and I've seen a lot of Rus players, when they hit Imperial, go more the battering ram route because of how good battering rams can be. On the flip side, though, GUA, being an Imperial, trying to take down these fortified palisade walls, GUA does have mangonels over here on the north side, but the very important factor as this goes to Imperial is the fact that one civ has culverins, the other civ does not. GUA does have culverins. Rus Springolds are better than most Springolds, but it's going to be difficult to counteract them with the culverins that GUA has.
The one thing you can do, and we may need to talk about this just a little bit later, as the mangonels pushing in onto this wooden fortress, going to be cleaning up a big chunk of this Rus army here on the eastern side. Potentially could look to push through these walls in the near future, but has lost kind of this forward proxy base. Once again, Faye Chan's army being split is sort of a double-edged sword. On one hand, you're able to put pressure on two sides at once, but there's no pressure being put on this right side other than killing the gate twice. This gate has gone down twice, and GUA's just rebuilt it. And so far, the rest of this army that's sitting here on the right side has been completely useless. If they had all been grouped, this fight on the western side may have gone slightly better for Faye. But as it stands, she lost a lot of military, and a lot of this ranged mass was kind of sitting around doing nothing on the eastern side. So now, we've got a big advantage, or, well, not advantage, but just the tempo is in GUA's hands right now. I would love to see all of these crossbows get perched up on this hill right here and just rain down death through this valley onto GUA's fast. That would have been so good. Unfortunately, they've run through opportunities slightly missed now. It's going to be engagement underneath this keep.
Yeah, and it looks like there's a lot of men-at-arms in this army composition for GUA. It does have the food to do it. Mangonel's getting crazy good shots on this east side. There's a lot of crossbowmen going down, which is really going to help GUA in this fight. Faye does add Streltsy just because she is the Rus and Imperial. Multiple Streltsy in here. It looks like about 6 in this fight. Not too many were able to get produced out of some of these archery ranges, but there's a decent amount of crossbows still alive, getting good shots at these man-at-arms. Keep trying to help them out at the same time. Springold's getting popped into essentially wood piles just because of some of the culverins that were back here. And this looks to be, based on this engagement, we only have a little bit of a ranged mass in for Faye. Although you might think this is maybe even on both sides, the difference is GUA in the back end, because of all the villagers he has here, adding outposts, getting bombard upgrades, the cannon emplacements completely as soon as those towers end up getting built. So as soon as GUA gets just a couple inches of land against Faye, he's going to be making outposts, he's going to be making bombard emplacements, which is going to be super difficult for Faye to come back.
Yeah, we're also just seeing GUA able to mass quicker. After a big fight, he throws all he has into production, gets a lot out very quickly. And on the other side, we see Faye is just a little bit too long in between getting things up and running. We've only got 3 horsemen and 2 Streltsy in production right now. That's not enough to keep up with a Holy Roman Empire player who has those marching drills. He has the ability to get his reinforcements to the front line quickly, and he has so much production back in his base. Look at all this.
Yeah, I mean, there's there's multiple stables, there's multiple barracks, so he could just continuously be pop cap if he chose to. And it looks like we have raids going on multiple sides of Faye's base. On the south, not having stone walls for Faye as Rus gets a little difficult. It looks like GUA got a little cheeky with some of these villagers trying to go up here, which I thought was a raid. Springold's left wide out in the open on the east side. That's one Springold easily dismantled. The second one might get popped if those Streltsy don't make a nice wall, and they do, but that clumps them up for mangonel shots. Springold goes down anyway, So many mangonel shots. And though those mangonels are just able to push, and those horsemen gonna try to do something about these mangonels, but it feels like the damage is already done here, Voiceless One.
Oh yeah, the mangonels got so much value. The Streltsy are here. They do incredible work, but they're here in such low numbers that they're not going to be able to tear through this massive men-at-arms the way that you'd like them to if there were, 30 of them. Just feel how different this fight would be if the Streltsy mass were able to be a little bit bigger than it is right now. But as it stands, GiveUA just kind of running this game. It's slow and it's steady, but he's squeezing map control away from Faye. There's a keep thrown up in the southwest side that has now made leaving through the eastern part of Faye's base impossible. Not going to happen. Locked in now, which means the only way you can get out is now through the north section, which is filled with blue units, blue towers.
Yeah, this keep is going to be pretty beneficial for GiveUA because it locks up this gold over here on the west side. There's an extra 3,500 gold that, although the relics are giving you that passive income, just that little bit because of how much siege that you need throughout this battle. And GiveUA does have a couple bombards queued up, which are matriculating their way south and then east, going for this sacred. Man, this essential match for the past, I don't know, maybe about 15 to 18 minutes, have been centered around this north sacred site. There's been so much back and forth going on for both of these players. This has just been an enjoyment to watch.
Oh, it's been so much fun. And it all started with that defensive keep that Faye placed here about 15 minutes ago, probably, to be honest. It kind of solidified her position on the map and said, I'm going to make my stand here. And GiveUA was kind of happy with that. He took out a lot of the control on the south part of the map, and he's just happy to squeeze map control away from her across the rest of the board. And, when he's ready, he'll roll those bombards down here, take out the keep, and, he's happy to play this slowly because he's got the long-term gold from those relics, and he's got the superior siege that is able to, win the day against the Roost, despite the fact that the high armory is there. All we're seeing out in terms of siege from Faye is springles and a couple battering rams, and that is not going to play well against bombards and culverins.
No, and it's honestly, we're just watching the power that culverins have over a game, just because of how much range they have. They're able to one-hit those springles, so those bombards end up staying alive. GiveUA just essentially using men-at-arms and land snakes as Streltsy fodder. He really doesn't care if these end up going down. He has an unlimited display of food, and is basically an unlimited display of gold as well, just because he has that gold mine and the ability. But watch that culverin just pop, take that springle down easily, so these bombards just continue to stay alive and bring havoc on that keep. That keep's going to go down after one more bombard, and it does go down. So GiveUA able to add more of his bombard towers and just keep going south. And Faye knows how much of a game of inches AoE 4 really is, especially in Imperial. Adds a keep about 10 feet to the east.
I don't know if that keep is going to stay up or go up. I mean, I understand the idea with wanting to throw it up there, but I think that's ill-advised at best, because the thing is about to shatter. And that's, yeah, she didn't cancel that. That's 800 stone down the drain.
Yeah, actually, you called that perfectly. There was a string of bombards just going towards that keep, and I'm like, yeah, this thing isn't going up. But now that she's lost that stone, ran out of stone over here on the east side, there's really one other stone outcropping that's left of only 1,200 all the way on the south. But the problem is for Faye, although, she does need stone, she does need to keep, there's a more immediate danger, and it's this massive, probably about 3,000 gold worth of siege just rambling over here on the south side. And it looks like Faye hit the panic button, going for all the Kremlin gremlins. It looks like there's about, I don't know, 20-ish of them trying to take down these culverins. And is actually going to take both of them down. So kudos to her for making that attempt.
That does buy her some time, but unfortunately, we're still only seeing Springle to be produced. Now, they will work okay against these bombards if they're able to get that point, but what they need is protection in order to, be able to go toe-to-toe with the bombards in the first place. And outside of the militia, which are about to all expire, there's not a lot left here other than a pack of about 20 Streltsy. Unfortunately, the hard counter to Streltsy are land snakes, because Streltsy like to stand still and they like to group up, and that is a land snake's favorite thing in the entire world.
And I think with GiveUA, especially in some of these earlier battles, and you called that correctly, how important land snakes are in some of these battles. He did have a decent amount of them. Looks like they did get caught in the crossfire by a lot of these Streltsy, so we don't see that many on the map. It looks like there's only one, but military count for both players 40 to 25 in favor of GiveUA, but I don't think this is more so how much military is here. It's how much map control you have. And GiveUA perfectly doing that. Faye decides to tap out as that map control was just unbearable for her to deal with. GiveUA with the win in this round. What a game.
That was such a treat to watch. It was just an absolute masterclass in terms of strategic long-term planning, keeping an eye on where you're weakest, where the map control is going to be most important, and in the long term, GiveUA just seizing better control of the map as a whole and able to just squeeze important choke points away from his opponent until he is able to get that W.
And you can see here with the villager count, just to accentuate your point, GiveUA's villagers kind of stayed pretty above Faye's, and it looks like just based on this little raid that we talked about, just a little bit at the 12-ish minute mark, GiveUA sending a knight over there, just making all the difference. And then obviously Palace of Swabia creating that. But I think Faye, especially in Castle Age, had the military count advantage. The problem is a lot of them were ranged. You know, she had a decent amount of horse archers and a decent amount of crossbowmen, which helped her in the map control department a little bit. But man, as much as I love horse archers, and I really love horse archers, I just feel like they just don't have a place in the meta anymore.
The problem I don't necessarily want to lay solely at the feet of the horse archers. There was a couple different factors that I think really played against Faye in the later parts of this game, Castle onwards, really. The first was that there were 2 or 3 major fights taken where her army was not grouped. And I just can't help but feel like they would have gone differently and the map would have gone differently if she had her whole army together, or at least pushing from 2 separate sides. What we had was one half of the army engaging in the west, while all of her ranged units just sat around in the east, waiting for the trebuchets to break through the palisade wall. And I can't help but feel like that was a turning point in the map, where once she lost half of her army like that, she lost so much of that crucial map control, and things just spiraled out of control from there.
Yeah.
The second thing that I feel like really went against her and she struggled with was that the siege superiority was never like seized upon. She had a moment where she had effectively neutralized all of the mangonels with just the presence of her 4 springholds, and then there was no action made on top of that. No pounce. She had wiped out most of the military of GiveUA after she took both of those split battles and won both of them, and then we just kind of stood there waiting for something else to happen.
Yeah, we noticed that a lot with that. Remember that, especially in Castle, that crossbow mass over on the south? I think that's where we see in Castle having that increased military count, but those crossbowmen not having much to do about it, and then it just kind of cascaded from there. Expert analysis, Voiceless One, and I appreciate that, and I hope both players do appreciate that as well.
We want to thank our MetaPlace website subscribers. Your contribution helps us keep the project sustainable. As we reach higher subscription goals, you are helping us cover more and more behind-the-scenes costs, such as video editing. Check out our subscription page using the link in the description, and remember to collect your perks. We will see you the next time.